Yes.
Why is your console log different?
It's black. There's a setting. Yeah, if you go to settings, just the three dots here, settings, you can change the theme of it. Yeah, that's another, sorry, it like cuts off on my monitor here. Let me see. I didn't have to download it. It was built in. Yeah. Oh, for this? Oh, sorry, for this? Yeah. Yeah, that's, we can discuss that later. It's kind of a lot of work to do that. But I used OMyZish, O-my-ZH, or ZSH. But, yeah. Cool. Okay, let's get back into it. So, we're talking about Axios next. Okay, what Axios is it's a library that we can bring into React to simplify making HTTP requests. Okay, so let's go to our VS Code here. I'm going to go through, if you guys were coding along to this part, you're welcome to console it out or comment it out. I'm just going to delete them. So I'm going to delete the console log here. Within the constructor, I'm going to delete console log in my component did mount. I'm going to delete the add one method. And I'm going to delete this console log state.num. Okay, so I've just got this .state, num0. I'm also going to delete the button and just create an H1. It says hello world. Make sure I didn't break anything. Okay. So let's go through, and I'm going to show you the syntax for creating an HTTP request from your front-end React code. First things first, we need to bring in that external library of Axios. Do you guys remember how to bring in external libraries? Yep. So it's a package. Node Package Manager, NPM, is what we use to bring in external packages of code. Okay, so we'll say npm I Axios. Yeah. So -- save used to be required before NPM version 5. Yeah. If you guys see that -- save on these NPMIs, that's an older thing that you used to have to do with any version of NPM less than 5. They automated that after NPM 5, so you don't have to put that anymore. If you see that online anywhere. What's that? Yep, I is just short for install. Yep, Control C will kill running. Some of you might have this built-in terminal in your VS Code. If you hit Control tilde, that might pop it up on yours. Otherwise, you might need to add it on there. But that'll simplify life instead of having to flip back and forth. I believe Windows, you're out of luck. You're going to have to flip to your Bash terminal. Yeah, the built-in terminal in your VS Code. No. Yeah, okay. So maybe Windows can get it. Okay. So we've got Axios installed. Okay, you can verify that. If you look at your file structure, go to your package.json. There's a dependencies section. These are external packages that we brought into our application. So we have React, and then now we've brought in Axios. So if you're ever wondering if you have something installed or not, you can just check here in your dependencies. Okay, now we want to use this within our component. How do we bring something into our component? Okay? You don't have a package.json? No, I have. Oh, okay. Okay, then retype in your terminal. Make sure that you're in your project folder. So in the root of your project folder, and then type that npm I Axios, A-X-I-O-S. If that doesn't work, well, one of your mentors come have a look at it, see if you can figure out what's going on. Okay, so we want to import Axios. So we're going to say import Axios from Axios. Okay, remember we're not putting a capital here. This is not a component that we're bringing in. Okay, and then we're going to use the Swappy API, so Star Wars API. If you go to swapi.co, not .com, so swapi.co, this is just going to be an example of what an API might look like. There's APIs for all kinds of things. There's weather, there's sports. On the note of sports, I would not recommend doing a sports project on your NodeDB. Sorry guys, if you like sports, I would not do it. The APIs are a pain. They're a pain in the rear. They usually take about 2 or 3 days to even gain access to. So, sorry, just quick aside. But there's Star Wars, there's Pokemon, there's really anything you can dream of. The documentation on each is going to vary though. Documentation is written by the creator of the API, right? Star Wars has very good documentation. That's why we're demoing with it today. But you can look through here. So swapi.co, if you hit this documentation in the top right, you can see all the different things that we can do to get information. So let's scroll down to, let's find the people. Let's see, I might have passed it. Yeah, people. Just a little ways down, there's going to be a people section. This is going to give us the URL that we want to make a request to obtain information on these people. Okay, let's come back to this. Going back to our code. Where is it within our React component that we make HTTP requests? Okay, yep, so they're going to go within our component did mount. This way we can make a request to obtain that data as soon as our render is completed, right? Now, JavaScript is synchronous, right? So what do we use to mimic asynchronous behavior in JavaScript? Promise. Okay, so let's create a promise. Okay, so we have a promise on which we want to put the data that we're receiving. So now we're going to create the syntax for making a request. Okay, we're going to use Axios, the library that we brought in. Then you're going to use the verb, the RESTful verb. So we're going to want to retrieve information from the server. So we're going to say .get. Okay, we're going to invoke .get. And as a parameter to .get, we're going to pass in the URL to which we're making that request. So going back to the Swappy page, they give us the URL. This is the designated chunk of code on the server that they're saying, hey, go to this URL and we'll give you this piece of data that we designated for you to obtain. Okay, so copy from the HTTPS just through people. You can cut off the HTTP and the one at the end. And go ahead and paste that within our quotations. So .get invokes a string of that URL. Okay? Now after this request has come back, right, we're going to make an Axios request to get information from this URL. The data that it's going to supply is going to look like this. So they give us an example response. And we're going to get a bunch of information that looks like this. That data is going to be placed on this promise. And then we want to do something with that data, right? That's the purpose in getting that data, is to do something with it. So we're going to say promise. And we're going to invoke a built-in method called .then on that promise. Okay, so we're saying make a request. When that request comes back, put it on the promise. Also, when that data comes back, then I want to do something with it. Okay, then it's going to take an anonymous function as a callback. The parameter to that anonymous function is going to be the response. Okay, and then I just want to console.log our response. Okay, let's walk through this one more time. We create a promise. We make an Axios request to get information. What are the 4 verbs again for REST? Get, put, post, and delete. Okay? So you're going to put one of those 4 here, depending on what you're wanting to do. So we're getting information. If you were wanting to put something new on that server, you change this to post, right? Okay, but we're getting information from this designated URL. This is not something you make up. This is something that they tell you, this is where you can go. For people, it says go here. For films, it says go here. This is going to be in the documentation of the API. Okay, so we're getting information about Star Wars people, putting it on that promise variable. When we've received that data back, then we want to do something with it. The functionality of what we want to do with it is going to be placed within a callback function. okay, and done within here. All we're doing right off the bat here is just console logging the data that we've received. Questions about that? Okay, let's go to, yeah. Right here? This is what's coming back from the promise. So basically what's contained within this promise is going to be passed into this anonymous function. Doesn't work. Yeah, you've got to use this dot then. There's more functionality underneath the hood that it's doing. Yeah. I know there's going to be a lot of frustration with what tech community refers to as black magic. It's things that you don't fully understand. Okay? It's going to be frustrating in the beginning. You just kind of have to trust that it knows what it's doing, right? As you get better, then you can take that extra time to go through and better understand like what's happening underneath.
The then method is pulling stuff from promise into response.
Yep. Okay, so let's go look at our React application. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And promise is a keyword.
Yep.
Used as a variable.
It's a method. Yep, it's a method. So remember the dot.
So you couldn't name it promises, that would fail.
Oh, sorry, promise can be called whatever you want. This could be my promise. Yeah. Yeah, this variable can be whatever you want it to be. But this dot then, this is a built-in method.
When you set it equal to the .NET response, it inherits them as the primary.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep. Good questions. Okay, so let's look at. Oh, I killed it. Let me get this running again. So npm start again. Okay, and I want you to look at this console log. This is our response, right? I'm console logging our response from the server. So this right here, we received an object. Object has a whole bunch of stuff on it. It's got a config. It's got data. It's got headers. It's got a status code. Let's talk about status codes real quick. So the easiest way for me to remember status codes is HTTP cat. Some of these are pretty good. I'm not going to go through all of them, but status codes are going to be a number that denotes a meaning, right? It's going to be a status of your request. So for an example here, we made a request to the server. They sent a response back with a status of 200. Okay, what status 200 means is okay. Everything's good. Everything that we did was right, and they sent us back what we were requesting. Okay, but you might see something like a status code 400. Bad request. Okay, so if you see something like a 400 or a enhance your comp. Or 404, these are going to be common ones you might see. So 404 is not found. So if this URL that you put doesn't exist out there, it's not something that the server designated as a place for you to receive data from, it's not going to find it. Okay, and you're going to get a status code 404. This is going back to the question earlier on what if the power goes out or what if the server goes down, right? You're going to end up with something like a status code 404. You're still going to get a console log here, right? But you're going to get a status 404, and you're not going to get any data back. Make sense? Yeah, Cedric.
I was going to say the key one is to always test your link. Because I was trying to do one of those earlier, and it just went nowhere. So I thought I wasn't getting down at all of that, but it's just a problem.
Yeah, and there's a good tool for testing this called Postman. There's a Chrome application. There's also like a desktop application. You can find this. If you just search Postman, it's going to be Postman API Development Environment. Okay, you should download this. We're not really going to use it in lecture today, but I'm going to show you what it does and kind of the use case for it. Let me go ahead and open that up. Okay, so Postman allows you to make a request to an API URL to test and make sure that you're getting the data back that you want. So just an example, right here you can designate what type of request. Get, post, put, delete are the ones that we're working with. Okay, so we want to get information from Swappy. So we'll get the URL for films. Okay, specifically, we're getting the first film. Okay, and then we're going to send that request. And this is going to be the response that we get back. So this is doing exactly what you're going to be doing with these Axios requests, but without having to type this out to test it. Okay. This will also come in handy with creating your own servers tomorrow. You'll use this more heavily tomorrow on your project, because you can test posting information to your server endpoint that you've created. Okay, so at least have that downloaded today. You'll use it. You'll use it in the future. Okay, just getpostman.com. Okay, other status codes that you might encounter. 504, gateway timeout. 500 is pretty common. Internal server error. So server's having issues, right? Method not allowed. Anyways, the important thing is that if you get a status code other than 200, go to HTTPcat and see what that means, right? It's just a code with a meaning behind it, form of communication. So we got a 200, so everything's good. We got our information back. Remember, your headers contain information about your request, but the thing that we really want is the data. Okay, so this is the data that we received back. So we'll look at data, more specifically, data.results, and now we've got our list of Star Wars characters. Okay, this has come across the web from some computer, who knows where, that's storing this information. Hopefully you guys can kind of see the power behind that, right? Again, you could have hard-coded an object with all of this information, but what if some superfan comes out and says, like, hey, Leia's hair wasn't brown, it was dirty blonde, right? And George Lucas is like, hey, you're right. And they change the official information on her, your hard-coded data is going to say hair color brown. Right, so you're going to have to go and update that information manually. You're going to have to be able to keep track of what information is changing to begin with. Obtaining it from somebody else that's doing that for you allows you to still bring in that information, display it, and not have to worry about changing that manually. Okay, so we're running the data and the results on the data. So within our code here, let's actually say response.data.results. Okay, going back, now our console log is just our array of people. Okay, now let's actually do something more reasonable with this material. So let's change num in our state to people. And let's say that's an array. It's going to hold an array. Okay, and then instead of console log, let's change this to this.setState. And we want to replace people with response.data.result. Okay, so we're obtaining that information, putting it on our promise. Then we're putting the response and setting that into our state. Okay, now we can use the information in our state throughout our application. So we can come down here to render, and we can map over that information. So say let people equal this dot state dot people dot map. Okay, let's get in the habit of destructuring. So let's actually say let bracket people equal this dot state. Now we can cut off this dot state, right? Now we're mapping over people. We're going to pass this anonymous function. Okay, what are the two parameters of a map? Okay, two that we'll most commonly use at least. There's more, right? Okay, so we're going to map over it, and we just want to return an H2 with the element. And then let's look at our data again here. Okay, let's look at the website. Okay, so this is what we were getting back as that response, right? Per element in the array, we're getting this information about each character. So we just want the name. We want to display the name. So the element is each one of these objects about a character. So we're going to say e.name. Let me add this console log back up here so I can show you guys that a little bit better. Response.data.results. Oh, okay. It's not wanting a duplicate variable declaration, so let's just say, we'll say my person. Okay, so this is the console log that I added back up here in our component did mount. So we've got an array that we're receiving from that HTTP request, right? Each item in that array has information about that character. So this first item is about Luke Skywalker. Second item here is about C-3PO. Right, so when we say e.name, we're iterating over this array, and we're saying on the first element, I want the name property, or the value of name, right? Okay, let's add that into our JSX. So we escape JSX with curly brackets, and we just say my person. And now, going back, we've now got a list of Star Wars characters. Here's that code. Questions? Questions so far? Okay, doing well. Okay, let's keep going then. Let's add a little bit more. Oh, let me show you this. So if you do notice, we're getting our names here, right? But we're also getting an error here. So you'll notice that this says something about a key. Okay, it wants a unique key. This is something that React uses when you're mapping over an array. It wants to have a unique identifier for each element in that array for some of the functionality that it does behind the scenes. So on your map, in this return here, we're going to add something called a key. Okay, and key needs to contain something that's unique. This example doesn't really have like a solid thing that we can use, but look for like unique ID numbers, something like that, something that's not going to be duplicated. If there's nothing better, then we can just use the index. Okay, so we'll use this I. Try and avoid this if possible, but it works. It's a unique identifier, right? Yeah.
Try to avoid using the index?
Yes. Yep.
Why?
Because if you remember, some of the array methods will change the location of something compared to its index, right? So if you have something that alters that, suddenly it's not going to match up correctly anymore, right?
The ID, if it had the API had that, then that would be a better option. That's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so you could look at this data. You could look through here and see if there's something unique, but we'll just use the index for now. But you'll notice now that error is gone, right? This warning is just saying, hey, like you're using logo, but you're not using it. So to get rid of that one, we're just going to get rid of this logo on line 2. Okay, looking pretty good. Okay, let's demonstrate using a query. So say we want to request a specific character. Okay, so within our JSX here, I'm going to delete this H1, the hello world. We don't need that anymore. And let's add an input. Okay, input is going to have a placeholder. It says enter character ID. Okay, and then we want to add an event handler. So on change. So if somebody types into this input box, and we want to fire off this dot handle change. Okay, we'll just put a self-closing tag here. And then let's add a button with an event handler of onClick. OnClick will fire off this dot getChar. And our button will just say get character. Okay, so we've created a couple new methods. So we need to create a handle change, and we need to create a getChar, or getChar, however you want to say it. So we'll say handle input. Okay, it's going to take in the E for event, right? And we're just going to set that to state. This dot set state. We're going to pass that an object. The crate that we'll put this in will just be input. And remember, you access that input as e.target.value. Okay, so we're going to need to add that input into the state. So doing this will actually add that into state for you. Okay? But it'll be good practice to put this up here just to allow other developers to see what you're intending on storing in state. Yeah, so if I didn't put this input here, when this fires off, it's actually going to add, it's going to create an input in state. Yeah. But do this just for readability. Yeah. Good practice. Okay, so they're going to type into our input box. And it's going to put that number of the character into our input in state, right? Okay, now when they click the get character button, it's going to fire off another method called get character. Handle input is on the input box here. Oh, sorry, I put handle change. Let's do handle input. Thank you. Handle input. So your input on change event handler is going to fire off handle input. The button get character is going to fire off get char. Yes. Is that better? There we go. Is that too small? Okay, now we're going to create another Axios request to just obtain the one single character, right? Based on the index, which if you look at the documentation, we can get a specific person just by adding a number. Okay, so let's see what that would look like. Within getCharacter here, we're going to create a promise. The promise is going to come from an Axios request. We're wanting to get information. Parameter is going to be a string of the URL, so I'm just going to copy this one. Okay, but then we're wanting to add some number on the end of here, right? So you could say this, we could say num, or this dot state dot input, right? Better yet, let's use the backticks instead. So we're plugging in this value, right? Let's destructure it. So let's call it. Let's do this way instead. Let's say let num equal this dot state dot input. Okay, and then now we can just say num here. We always want to pass a number into here. So if they don't actually enter something into the input, let's say else, just defaulted to the number 1. So this will always have a value. If they enter something, it's going to be whatever they entered. Otherwise, it's just going to default to 1. And you're going to get an error on your request, right? Because this might be undefined. Okay, what comes after? How do you handle a promise? Okay, so promise dot then. When invoke dot then, what does dot then take? Okay, I'm going to shorthand it to res. Okay, let's create one more thing in state here. Let's create our character. So we will set this into our character state. Okay, so we could say this dot set state is going to be character. What are we going to put here? We can start it, but we don't actually know exactly what our data looks like, right? This is going to get you. This is going to get you sometimes. So what I recommend doing, before you do any set states, go ahead and just console log your res, just to see what the data looks like. Okay, so let's go back. Oh, thanks. Comma. Okay, so we could say I want number 3. getCharacter is going to fire off that Axios request. It's going to give us character number 3, which is R2D2. So we know it's on data. or res.data.name. Okay, so now we can come back here. We know that this is going to be on res.data.name. Res is right here, right? Res. Our result came on data, and then we want the name. Right here? Or sorry, right here? That's just something that you designate. The dot then is going to take in the promise and handle the functionality within that callback.
So it has like a system object that's being fed into it from promise?
I'm not sure exactly how it formats this underneath, but
I have console log just showing up as object. No data.
object just on this second request right here.
Yeah.
What did you console log? Just res.data.name?
Console log. Yes.
So just res should still, just double check all your syntax here. Make sure you don't have any typos. Okay, so we're now putting that one character's name within the character state. So let's display that. Let's come down here and just say, we can add an H1. It says like my search character. Okay, we'll add a div here to place it within. And we want to say this dot state dot character. Okay, so going back, let's make sure it all works. So first thing, we're still getting that list of all the characters, right? But then we want to search for character number 3. We'll get character, and it's going to be displayed here. We could say 4. 2, right? Does it make sense, the functionality that allows us to do that? Sure. Yep, so it's just wanting a number here for the character. It's just an ID. I'm not sure if it actually is going to be placed within the object that they give you. Just this URL here. So the URL that they designated for this person ends with a 1. So in sending this URL, it's accessing this specific character. Okay, now the way that we did this is actually using a param. Okay, remember there's 3 ways that you can send data. You can use params, queries, or the body. Okay, you're going to see param. It's going to look something like this. It's going to be like people / like a number, okay? You might see online, it's denoted by a colon. The colon is not actually going to be within your address URL here, but you'll see this tomorrow within Node. Okay, so param is like a number. Query is going to be something instead of like people 2, you're going to see people question mark and like a key value pair separated by an equal. So if we were wanting to access various pages, you could say like page is equal to what page? 3. Okay, or person, character, ID 3. The syntax within your code is going to be very similar. The general rule for where to use a parameter versus where to use a query is going to be you'll use a query for like filtering. Okay. Otherwise, parameter is going to be more of your go-to. Body. So you've got param, query, and body. Yes. Now one thing, I would take note of this, because this gave me a lot of headache in the beginning. So certain RESTful verbs will only allow you to transfer data certain ways. Okay, so a get is only going to let you transfer data with a param and a query. You cannot use a body. Okay, a put, if you're wanting to edit information, will let you use all 3, body, param, or query. A post, you're adding information into a server, will let you use all 3, param, query, body. And a delete will only let you use param and query. You cannot use a body. Okay, last questions on what we've done thus far. Sure. Is that good?
What is num referring to in the swap date?
Right here?
Yeah, because I understand when you create num.
Yeah, so we've put this .state.input. So whatever number they input in that input box, and we've placed that on a variable called num. Okay, so you could, to simplify this, you could say that instead. Does that make more sense? We're just plugging in their input number into the end of that string, into that URL. So this is basically going to look like, after all is said and done, like that kind of thing, right? And whatever number they input is going to just be plugged in here. Does that make more sense? Okay, good question. Yeah, Cedric.
In the ES6, if you want to search with the ID, with just the ID, right? Like number, sign, curly brace, put that inside of it, right?
Right here?
Yeah.
You can name this whatever you want, just like we did here. So when we change this to num, you can call it num. We could call this ID. We could change this to ID. Right? It's whatever we designate we want it to be referred to as. Make sense?
Outside of ES6, how would that look? Like, would it
Yeah.
be,
Yeah, so we could copy this. This would, instead of backticks, you're going to just use a regular quotation, right? And then we're just going to concatenate it. Oops. All right. Let me see what we get out of here. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a type error about not able to read the property map. It's undefined.
So that's going to be somewhere within this code right here.
I've coded it exactly how you see it.
Okay, yeah, Logan, have a look at that. One last thing that I want to show you before we go do the mini project is kind of a short-handed way of doing this promise stuff. Okay, so far we've been putting our response into a promise. Okay, we can shorthand this. Let me copy it so that you can see the equivalent here. So this is kind of the old way. I did this so that it'd be easier to visualize a promise. But what you can do instead is get rid of this let promise. We're just going to call axios.get the URL. Okay, then we're going to chain this dot then onto the end of that call there. So we're making this Axios call dot then we're going to go do something. Does that make sense? So we could actually clean this up even more. Okay, this is going to do the same thing as this. So we removed the let promise. We removed this promise from the beginning of the dot then, right? So instead of putting the response in a promise and then invoking dot then on that promise variable, we're just making our request and then invoking dot then on our request. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
If you want to add another API, we just add that with the same function.
Yep. Yep. You could make multiple Axios requests within this component did mount, right? We could have this request, and then you want to make another request somewhere else. Yep. You can do as many as you want. Yeah, Cedric.
And it covers catch. Is this something you cover?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can show that now. So there's another thing that you can do called .catch. Okay, so we can just continue the chain. So if there's an error that comes back from this, then .catch is going to catch that. It takes an anonymous function, and then you can just console.log your error. Okay, the mini project will expose this to you guys again, but let's go back real quick and test you on your recollection of the concepts we talked about this morning. So I'm going to go through the class in pairs, and I want you guys to just answer these questions in pairs. Okay, so it looks like our front has an odd number. Okay, so your first three get lucky. Your group of three. What is an API between you three? You can take a minute to discuss if you need. Okay, so it's an application program interface.
Allows you to access its data and interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a small portion of the server that's able to be requested by the client.
Yeah, good job, guys. That's good. Okay, next two. What is REST? You can discuss with each other. Make sure you've got a good answer. Cool. Let's see. Next to while we're doing this, if anyone who's not answering a question, try and pay attention, but also go ahead and start forking and cloning the mini project. Let's go ahead and get that on your computer so that we can jump straight into that. Okay. Next to what is JSON? Yeah, I'll give this to you guys.
So JSON it is essentially the language that translates information from the server to the client so they can talk to each other.
Okay. Intermediary language, right? Cool. Good job. Let's see. How do we handle asynchronous calls within React?
So we call them the API, which is their setup, but then the actual command line.
Okay.
Which call it. The ID. When we set up our classes, to make sure that they use their whatever information they're supposed to be pulling from the API. These instructions or from after calling the API.
So there's a specific term that we use for this. When you're wanting to fake asynchronicity, right, within JavaScript, there's one word term that we use. Where are you going to start? Anyone want to help him out? How do we handle asynchronous calls in React? Yes. Promises. Yep. Okay. Next to, what are the 4 primary REST calls, and what do each of them do? Yep.
They post ask the server, get receive info, put updates info, and get reviews.
Great. Yeah, good job. Okay, explain the client-server model. Sorry, I'll come back to you in just a sec.
Basically, it just says that generally we will be using a client, which is going to be the machines requesting information. It's going to send a request that gets changed into JSON to the server, which is going to take that request and then take it back to the client, and then it gets translated back into JavaScript.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Okay. List 4 JSON syntax rules.
It's like the one thing I didn't take notes on. No trailing commas.
No trailing commas. Double quotes.
Double curly braces? Is that?
Okay, there's surrounding brackets.
No equal sign.
Yeah, great. Good job, guys. All right, last but certainly not least, what is CRUD and how does it relate to REST?
CRUD is similar to REST in that it's also for ways to process your data. So it stands for create, read, update, and delete.
Okay. Nice. Good job, guys. Okay, let's look at the mini.
Quick question for you, Eric.
Yes.
So,
I'm coming back to you as well, John. Sorry.
what is the exact difference between CRUD and REST?
So CRUD is a model, right? It's a reminder to say I have a full CRUD application means that I'm using full REST, right? My application can get information. It can delete information. It can update information. And it can add information, right? So it's a model. REST If you remember, REST is more, it gives you access to those verbs. Right, that get, put, post, delete. It encourages the consistent structures. It's an architectural style, okay? So REST is an architectural style. It's something that we designated as this is the way that we're going to do it so that everyone can understand it. CRUD is a model to base that creation of your API off of to ensure that you have full malleability of that API. Good questions. John, you had a question.
You just post the Q&As that you just went through.
Yeah, I can post these as well. Cool. Okay, so does everyone have the mini project forked, cloned? Yep. So you won't need to install it, but you will need to npm i, which we'll install. So your package JSON will already have Axios in it. When you fork and clone a project, running npm i just right off the get-go is going to install all of those dependencies from your package.json. Okay, and that's in your setup here. So you'll fork and clone it, cd into the directory, npm installer, npm i, and then go ahead and start it up, npm start. If you're still running your project from lecture, make sure that you kill that before you start up your new one. So Control C on that. Okay, once that fires up, let me just combine these. Okay, now go ahead and open up this API documentation in another tab. You will need to reference this. This is kind of mimicking your API docs. Okay, now step 1 is having us create a get Axios request to get all vehicles. Okay, so looking at our code, the structure of this project is it's going to have various methods already created for you that you're going to use to plug in your Axios calls to obtain that information. Okay, most of the work is already done through this. Everything's already bound. Okay, all of the JSX that displays your information is all done for you. You will not touch any of this. The only thing that you're going to be coding in is within each of these methods. Okay, so get vehicles is what we're working in on step 1. The get vehicles method, okay? So go ahead and take just a couple minutes. See if you can remember how to write an Axios request to get those vehicles. Reference this docs here. So get vehicles is just going to end with this /vehicles to obtain all vehicles. So just like we were doing in Swappy with /people to obtain all the people, you're going to do it in here. Another thing I want to mention is this toast thing. So toast is, you may have seen it before, like a little thing will pop up here, like a little status, like whether it's a successful procedure or if something goes wrong, you'll get like a red one pops up. We're just going to use toast.success for if it's successful. Otherwise, we're going to use toast.error. Okay, so go ahead and take just a couple minutes, then we'll go through this together. Okay, let's go through it. So the first thing that you need to kind of determine is you're going to have an Axios request. You need to determine which verb you're using, right? So we're getting information. Okay, and then you need to determine what URL you're making that request to. So within your documentation here, you're going to find the base URL, really teeny right there. So you're going to use that base URL, and then you're going to determine what you need to add to that for each specific verb. Okay, so we're making a get. We want to get all vehicles, so we need to add a /vehicles to the end of this base URL. Okay, so I'm going to copy this base URL. Okay, and then within get vehicles, how do we start this? Okay, so I heard Axios.get. Yep, so we're going to do it the shorthand way. So I showed that promise, again, just to help you visualize what a promise is doing. But from now on, let's try and get in the habit of not using that. I know I always hated in class when they were like, here's the wrong way to do it, and then here's the right way to do it, because then you remember the wrong way. Hopefully that's not the case. They both work, right? So there was no wrong or right here, but this is better. It's cleaner, right?
Would you also recommend using like the ES6?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Use ES6, yeah. Okay, so we've got Axios.get. Okay, we're going to invoke that. What does .get take in as a parameter? URL, right? Perfect. So /vehicles.
Does this need the HTTP in the get?
That is a good question. It probably does, yeah. HTTPS. Okay, so we've got axios.get. Then what? See what I did there? Dot then, right? Yep. Okay, so dot then. Okay, this is going to take a callback with a response. Okay, so if we're successful, we want to use the toast, right? So toast.success. And then we want to just say, oh, I don't know why that ought to be. Okay, success. Got the vehicles. Okay, then we also want to set it into state. So we want to set state to update vehicles to display. Okay, so we're going to say this dot set state. We want to update vehicles to display with the value of what? We don't know yet. So let's console log it. What did I spell wrong? Sorry. I can't hear. Oh, six. Oh. Suck cuss. Okay, so we want to console log our res, right? Okay, let's go look at that. So the get all vehicles button here is what's actually going to fire this off. So we'll hit that. This is our toast. Okay, let's look at our response here. So it's response.data. Okay, so now we know we can set this equal to response.data. Okay, last thing we're going to add on is that dot catch. So if something goes wrong, say dot catch, invoke dot catch. It's going to take an anonymous function. Instead of console logging the error, we're just going to say toast.error. Couldn't get vehicles. Wah, wah. Okay, cool. Go ahead and try doing step number 2. So number 2, we're going to update okay, specifically we're going to update the price. So looking at our application, after we've gotten our vehicles, there's an increased price and a decreased price right here. So we wanted to say, like, when we click increase price here, this is going to go up. When we decrease, it's going to go down. So be mindful of the RESTful verb that you use. Okay. Also be mindful of our documentation here. Okay, let's do it together. So we're now down within update price, somewhere around line 65. How do we start? Okay, so we're doing a put. We're updating information, right? Okay, we're making a request to, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. There we go. Okay. That's our base URL. Let's change it to backticks. Okay, based on our documentation, we know that to put information to increase or decrease the price, we're going to say slash vehicles slash an ID and then slash whatever we're wanting to change. Okay, the amount. Okay, so we're going to have slash vehicles. Then we're going to have slash something else. Okay. Okay, $, brackets. What's the first? What's the first one? Okay, so the ID, and then another slash, $, not price change. Okay. Dot then. Response, anonymous function here. Within here, we want our toast to fire, so toast.success. Yeah, toast is another library that was brought in that allows us to, let's see if this is still working. I might have broke it. Yeah, see this little thing up here? Watch when I hit get all vehicles, this little thing that pops up here. That's a toast, yep. It's just the library. So when you bring in an external library, they'll have documentation that tells you how to use it. It's more of just allows you guys to visually see when things are successful. So, okay, updated price. Okay, this dot set state. We're wanting to update the vehicles to display. So we're updating vehicles to display. And it's going to be in res.data.vehicles. Okay, and you'll find this again by console logging that response and determining what the structure of your return data is, right? Okay, if something goes wrong, .catch. Failed updating. Okay, so now looking at our application, we can get vehicles, and then we can increase price. Why is that not working? Let me see.
saying that when we pass in price change as a parameter, price change is a string, not a number.
Yeah, it's expecting that though. If you look here, change is meant to be a string. Yeah, so it just passes in either up or down as a string. Oh, here we go. Weird. So just refreshing it fixed it. So yeah, that's working. Okay, let's do the next one. So step 3, we're making a post request. Let's actually just do this one together because I did not show you body. So we are working in add car. Okay, so add car has an object here called new car. This is the object that we're wanting to pass as the body. Okay, so the way that you pass a body is you're going to say Axios dot post. This is normal, right? Let's copy our URL here. Here we go. Okay, we know that a post needs /vehicles. So we have /vehicles. That's our first parameter. The second parameter within this post method is going to be your body. Okay, so here we're going to pass in new car. Okay, and then the usual dot then. And here, our toast. We're going to update state, this dot state. This dot set state. We're going to update vehicles to display. And we're setting that equal to res.data.vehicles. Okay, dot catch. Toast dot error. Failed to add vehicle. Okay, important takeaway is body is just passed as a second parameter. Comma delimited, right? Now what that's going to allow us to do is we can now add a new car. We can add a new vehicle. That is going to now be added at the very bottom here.
So how do we know that under set state, we're setting vehicles to display to res.data.vehicles?
Yeah, so I just went based off the first one, but you're going to be best off just console logging. So within this dot then, first thing you do, console log res. And then just look at the structure that you get that back as within your console log here. So that res, it's probably going to want us to put something here, but let's see. So when we fire that, your res is going to come back and we're going to say, okay, res dot data dot vehicles. So just make that a habit. Very first thing, just console log your response. And then you can see the results of it.
Okay, so post is going to take the forms that you did, take the definition of each one of those forms, format those into an object, and paste that on the end of the database. And then you just update your definition there.
Yep, you're passing that post, that body, on your HTTP request, right? Remember, there's two things on HTTP. There's a header and there's a body. The body we said is not mandatory. It's an optional thing. So this is an example of when we're actually using that. It's just being passed on the request and then used on the server. Okay, I'm going to leave the last one. The delete is very similar to the way that we did an update. You're going to pass, you're just going to pass in the ID, again, based off of our documentation here. Okay, you just change the verb here to delete. Set the state. Good to go. Okay, last questions. Yeah.
Can you just kind of briefly explain what response is?
Yeah, so response, think of it as what data is coming back from the server. You're making a request for data, right? Now on a delete, it doesn't seem as intuitive, right? Because you're not requesting some data. You're requesting to delete data. In that instance, just look at the documentation. Like if we were to look at delete here, a lot of times they're going to say what's returned from it. So here, it's going to return the updated vehicles array. So say there's an array on the server that has a list of vehicles. We're going to make a delete request that's going to delete one of those vehicles, and they're going to return the new array minus that one vehicle, right? Good question. Any other questions? Okay, thanks guys.